Man, it really feels like Dark Souls 3 is right around the corner, unless you're listening to this in the future, in which case we just dated ourselves. Man. But if you are going to be buying Dark Souls 3 online, like a physical copy, please consider going to Duckfeed.tv/tipjar and using our Amazon link there. It's an affiliate type thing, and buying your game or your strategy guide through that will go a long way toward helping us kind of keep the lights on here. So yeah, that is Duckfeed.tv/tipjar. Also, go to Duckfeed.tv/store to check out some new items. We have some premium Abject Sufferings. We also have some postcards. You can get a random postcard pack. And also check out Duckfeed.tv/shirts, where you can vote on monthly designs and stuff like that. Just a whole bunch of cool stuff happening, all at Duckfeed.tv. There we go.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a pixelated favorite.
And this week we are continuing our off-season by talking about Titan Souls, which is an action-adventure game developed by Acid Nerve and published by Devolver Digital for the PC, PS4, and Vita in 2015. I believe there's an Android version as well.
It's Acid Nerve, the developer, not the genre of techno music.
Okay, cool.
This is a boss rush game,
Yeah.
and it is the story of a girl. It is, and the idea here is that you have there are only boss fights in this game. There are 19 Titans that you need to defeat, and each have their own patterns and strategies and vulnerabilities that is your job to figure out.
Yes, and so even though this is a top-down Zelda-like game, you really only have one attack. And this kind of articulates with this bow and a single arrow that you charge up to fire, and then you can either go retrieve it or draw it back to yourself like Thor's hammer.
Yes, and my favorite kind of moments in this game are where you have to use that, or you should use that to kill Titans.
Yeah.
That was my epiphany moment. Like in the 3 hours I spent with this, my one, that was my moment that I was like, oh, that's cool. This is so it's a little bit deceptive. So it's kind of billed as, and the demo and everything, and this was born out of a game jam, and feels like it is like, what if the idea if all the bosses die in one hit and your character dies in one hit? Mm-hmm. So you 100% die in one hit, and the Titans kind of do. There's a lot of ways they get around that, and I think the game is at its strongest when they're not cheating that.
Right.
When it's not like you have to shoot it multiple times for it to expose a weak point. Because then it eliminates what's the thing? You know, it's like it doesn't die in one point. Yeah, it's like you've just thrown out your premise. And those fights I found kind of the most tedious in this game, where you have to kind of soften up a boss. But many of the bosses die in one hit. The trick is figuring out where to hit them and how to make them expose that part of their body.
Right. So it's a matter of watching their patterns. And because you can only shoot when you're standing still, getting to this position to take your shot involves sometimes doing the most dangerous thing possible.
Yes. Yeah. And it's this is kind of where this makes sense. You know, it has Souls in the title. Dark Souls is a stated influence on this.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the Souls part, is this focus on boss fights and this idea that you have to observe and learn a boss before you can actually fight them successfully.
Right.
Is where what this is doing on this show.
Yeah. Also, it has a dodge roll. So
yeah, it has a dodge roll of a type. And it is, but it's not like there's so many things it doesn't do, where it's like, it's not, there are a couple other similarities too, like the music only really kicks in with bosses, but it is, it doesn't have RPG elements. There isn't exploration. The storytelling is very slight, things like that. It doesn't have in common. It's really this boss fight focus.
Yeah.
What they're going for is this, absolute tiny moment in time, and the game does everything in its power to underline it, which is smart, is when you actually defeat the boss, because you've made this one shot, you found this kind of perfect shot, you make it, the world goes gray, the sound like makes a very satisfying sound, and then goes quiet.
Yeah.
And then you draw all the poison out of the boss. You grab its soul in a thing that's very obviously like an inversion of the Shadow of the Colossus thing.
Right. And so when this works, at its best, this game is a fist pump generator because, you'll do a sharp intake of breath, hold it, release your shot, and then you hit it like, yes, I said, fuck yes out loud at several times just because of how narrow victory felt at that moment.
Yeah, and that's I think that's what they're going for. That's the thesis. That's the idea. For me, it's not super successful at that. It's not like my fist remained unpumped. This fist got pumped. However,
you're only human. You're not made of stone.
Slowly and quickly, this fist pumped. But it is the time between that is something we're going to talk about. And I'm going to do my best not to sound like a whiny baby who's not good at video games, because I'm actually a very cool, handsome man who is good at video games. So that's why I want to make sure that I'm portraying myself accurately.
Yes. And the best way to do that is to say so.
Yes, exactly. I'm really cool. You just ask me. One of the things when I talk about that time in between your fist pumps, a lot of it is spent with this exploration, this connective tissue of the game, which I is really definitely trying to evoke the quiet moments in Shadow of the Colossus. It is pretty pixel art that kind of reminds me a little bit of Fez in the detail work.
Especially the mix between 3D and 2D.
Yes. And the music is very chill during these parts. You're doing a little bit of exploration. There are a couple of little puzzly type things you have to do to get to a Titan. Yeah. Or just figuring out how to navigate to them.
Right. Some of the entrances are hidden. Some of them are blocked. But that is kind of few and far between. Most of the time, this is just distance that you have to cover between a checkpoint and whichever boss you want to encounter.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And you can take these on in pretty much any order that you want to, and you do not have to kill them all. However, to get the real ending and fight the last boss, you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And unless you do the cheat code that I do for final secret bosses, which is enter in final secret boss Titan Souls into YouTube, which is my perennial cheat code for seeing a secret ending boss. Yeah, that requires a lot of stuff. I didn't beat all the bosses in this game.
Neither did I.
Yeah, which I don't feel bad about because
I beat the game. I got the credits to roll. I played all the bosses and I know the tricks.
I definitely don't. I don't have anything else I really want to do with it. Yeah. So as I mentioned before, is as a result of a game jam, like a Ludum Dare or Ludum Dare. I've heard that pronounced a couple of different ways.
Ludum Dare, yeah.
I've heard it. I've heard both ways from reputable people. And it was originally kind of a Flash thing. I remember playing it back then. However, it got ported to its own engine when Devolver Digital signed on as the publisher, who are the company that publish every indie game.
Yep.
And are really great. They pretty much everything good in indie space seems to come out of Devolver Digital.
Yeah, they seem like a cool company.
Making a lot
of good stuff
they take,
possible.
Risks on things, and I like those guys.
Yeah. And I think we already answered a little bit of what this is doing on Bonfireside Chat. This is part of a wave of game that has souls in the title.
Yes, that's all it really takes.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for Soul Suspect Murdered.
Yeah. But season. It is a stated influence, right? And there are these rhythm things, but these holes that we're going to talk about here, in between all the encounters and even holes within the encounters really do make this kind of a source of frustration. We didn't get an awful lot of responses. We're going to do the responses that we got at the end of this episode because there's really no time for an appendix. But in general, this game is kind of proven to inspire ambivalence in our community, these people who talked about it at best, and then frustration at worst.
And even when you look at the kind of critical reaction to it too, this game has its supporters, but there's a lot of I was reading reviews and there's a couple things that are it's 8 out of 10 kind of on the top end, and then 6 or 5 out of 10 on the low end. Not that a numerical score means that much in a game review, just that this was kind of my feeling coming away from this was that this was a game jam idea that didn't need to be developed into a full game.
Oh, for sure.
It's not a good enough idea. That's just a weird thing to say about a game, but the core mechanic of this isn't good enough. It's kind of clever, and it's so so this, nothing exists in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was playing this at the exact same time that we just did Dark Mouse for Check It Out Comrade, which is another game that takes takes even more Souls inspiration, but misses some essential stuff. So I have that on my brain. And then we also just did Super Hot, which is another game that has a core concept, but that core concept, like I just wanted more.
Yeah.
After playing it, I'm like, oh, this 100% supports a full game. And I wish this game was 3 times as long as it is. And I never think that. Like I never want like a 2.5 hour game to be 6 hours. And I wanted that so bad with Super Hot. Like that concept supports itself. I don't think this one does.
Yeah. No, it definitely, the concept is definitely overextended. And you can tell like there are boss gimmicks that repeat and stuff like that.
It's kind of interesting as just like how much can we explore this one idea, but you look at that whatever that, like how you look at art thing where it's like, what was it trying to do? Was it successful? Is what it was trying to do worth doing? It doesn't. I don't think that last bit. I don't think it succeeds on that, which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this probably raises a question. I could get to this in the summary, but I want to say it while it's on my mind. Has there been anything that explicitly quotes Souls as a design influence? Aside, like, okay, I'm going to disqualify Shovel Knight because that is
Shovel Knight.
because that's Shovel Knight. Like, is there anything besides Shovel Knight that directly quotes Souls as an inspiration that is successful? Not as successful as Souls, but
still pretty successful,
right? Like successful on its own merits.
Not yet. Like other than Shovel Knight, which like definitely does and is one of my favorite games. Not yet. Yeah. And it makes me a little bit nervous for this like wave of future offseasons and stuff we have. Like I really want to play Salt and Sanctuary and I-Tier and the like. I think they look cool. But just that's the thing. Like if you get a chance, Cole, it is worth your time to play Dark Mouse, even if you're not going to beat it. One, because it's not a terrible game. Like there's fun to be had with it. Yeah. I had more fun with it than I did with this game. But 2, it is just such a good expression of like articulating the things that are really important in Dark Souls that are missing in something. Like if you can play like, it's like looking at a jigsaw puzzle with random 1/4 of the pieces missing. Yeah. It's really interesting to see that and be like, oh, like, yes, this definitely still looks like, Guernica, but it's like a messed up, an incomplete Guernica. Right. And that's what I'm afraid of with these other games where it's just like people, smaller budgets and smaller teams or just maybe the gameplay and that kind of feel of Souls like doesn't translate to non over the shoulder things. Like I was complaining about Titan Souls on Twitter and I was thinking about it and it's like, one, this is a weird thing to say. I had more fun with Lords of the Fallen than I did with this. And that's not, that is not a great game. That's like I'm kind of like in the world of people who apologize for that game. Like I am probably like an eminent apologist for that game, which is a weird place to be in. But I'm like, out of all the stuff that's coming out, like it's hard for me not to think like, oh, like I wonder if that follow-up will be the one to watch because if they like listen to the feedback, like maybe they'll figure it out. Like it's close enough to still be able to get some of these ineffables and they had a practice game to throw away. Yeah. So maybe out of all those, like Lords of the Fallen 2 or, the Techno Space Station version that they're making, like maybe that'll be the one. I don't know, but we haven't had a successor, and that's a bummer because it's such an important game that it deserves to have like an impact. Right. And like a good impact.
Right. It's just weird that it inspired this movement that has no legs. Yeah. By all appearances.
Yeah, and it's just like, and that mileage is going to vary too. There are a lot of people who really like Dark Mouse. There are a lot of people who like Titan Souls, but neither of those games worked for me, or did enough to evoke the stuff that I like about Souls. Nor did this evoke the things I like about Shadow of the Colossus. In fact, this is like one of the games that is the least like Shadow of the Colossus I can think of. Like the only similarity is that there are just boss fights. Yeah. And there's long spaces in between, but nothing else that Shadow of the Colossus, which is like one of a handful of games I consider to be like a masterpiece. That's on the masterpiece list of Watch Out for Fireballs. Like it is everything that game made me feel that was good, this game failed to evoke or inverted.
Yeah, I mean, there's no sense of majesty or scale in the presentation, and no emotion.
And there's no emotion, and it's so frustrating. And Shadow of the Colossus is never frustrating. Like the most, I mean, not never, but like you fall off the Colossus and you have to climb back up. Right. that sucks. But, Shadow of the Colossus is not about being balls hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about like fail states. Like you can fall like 70 stories in that game and live.
Yeah. Like it's very rare that you actually die and have to restart from the shrine.
Yeah.
In Shadow of the Colossus, whereas this really is, based on trial and error that is not just like intrinsic to the encounter. It is from the beginning every time.
It's walking back to the boss simulator.
Right.
I want to play the artwork simulator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No More Heroes is later.
Oh, yeah.
No, we're not actually playing No More Heroes. That's not in a plan.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and here's the thing. Like, you can walk into the majority of these boss fights and kill them in, just one shot, like really quick. Like some of these fights end before the music really, swells up. But that figuring it out, like the process of doing that, you're going to die and run back so many times that it does wear out its welcome. It doesn't matter really how close the checkpoint is. The fact that it is not just like putting you right back there, it is a strange decision to me that seems born not so much out of like care for the player.
Yes. Yeah. I counted it because people, when we were talked about doing this on Slack, and a lot of people got ahead of us, they were like, oh, the boss run-ups are murder. And I counted them out. The longest one I think I did was 15 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's one of those things where like...
Well, it compounds.
It is. Yeah, it compounds, and I'm already frustrated. And like Souls does that, right? Like I die in a Souls boss, and the game doesn't want you to run past the enemies. Like you can do that, you can lose everything, but there's always a point in Dark Souls where like, and this is the same problem I had with Dark Mouse too, where you've lost everything and you have nothing left to lose, and then it's like such a cool feeling because it's really freeing, and it's one of the things that's unique to that game. Yeah. So like, hey, I just need to try to fight this boss. How can I get to them without engaging every bullshit encounter on the way? Yeah. And that's part of my Dark Souls metric, is that like if I'm having a hard time with the boss, I always get to the point where I can just run past everything. Like I just learn the speedrun strats. Yeah. For that section. And you can never really speed up what you're doing here, even if it isn't very much time. Right. Like you can't really dash upstairs. There are several ones where you have to slow down and climb stuff, which like is maybe kind of cool and explory the first time. Yep. But just anything repeated that many times becomes tedious. Yeah. So we'll get into it. It's not without merit. Like I suspect like this is probably a good game that I didn't like and didn't have fun with. Like, there's probably some goodness here, but like
there are definitely moments. Like there are moments, but like overall, those feel trifling compared to just some of the pacing problems, which might be all that it comes down to is like pacing and kind of like friendliness. Yeah.
It just and how much you like how much you dig these quiet moments, because they didn't work for me. Like I didn't think it was that pretty or the music was that good that I wanted to be in this world.
Yeah, like the intention probably is to give you a moment to breathe and just calm your nerves and get back there and think about the way that you failed. But in reality, like, I mean, for me, it was only like that about 25% of the time. The other 75%, it was like, I just want to iterate as much as I can. And like it just was time for me to get madder.
I did get madder, and a lot of the times I failed, it just felt like luck, which is like the worst thing that could happen in one of these games. Like that goddamn Yeti with the exposed butthole, which one, like way to ruin the grandiose mood you've been going for the entire game. But two, like there's so many times I was 100% sure I hit that, like 100% sure, and then just it just didn't work. So I'm just like, what did I even do wrong? Like nothing. I can't think of the way I should do this differently. I'm just trying again until the stars line up. Right. Like, so it just felt very luck based, which is like not, I've watched somebody speedrun this game in 20 minutes and beat every boss. So I know that it's not entirely luck based, but the fact that it felt that way, as opposed to in Dark Souls, where like sometimes there are some things that are luck based, like you can get bad RNG, but it never feels that way. At least to me. Is another big difference in like a way to do a difficult game. Like it didn't always feel like my fault when I failed, and that's the worst. Yeah. Anywho, let's get into it. We're gonna go through these bosses. They run together for me too, so don't. We'll try our best to describe them, but and we're not gonna spend tons of time talking about the just like walking over bridges.
No, just
in
like
between things, because it's like
Understand that it is probably sufficiently pretty, and the music and just a general presentation is pleasant enough at first glance.
Yes. Yeah. It is inoffensive.
Inefficient. Inoffensive and inefficient.
Inoffensive.
Yeah. Inexorable.
Arrivederci. Tell me a little about the plot, Cole.
You play as a hero who is looking to gather Titan souls, which are guarded by Titans. They are said to grant the wielder power, that is all.
Yes, unless you get to the ultimate ending, Truth, where you fight a different Titan, and then nothing.
Yeah.
Like, and then there's some runes. Like, yeah, it is very story light, which, you know,
It's
again,
fine.
I'm fine with story light, but it is that kind of story stuff contextualizes exploration. You know, like that would have given me a reason to explore these beautiful areas. They gave me. One thing to think about is, like, I was thinking about this, and maybe the ideal user for this game is the kind of person who spent a lot of time like just climbing random mountains in Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh yeah.
Which I didn't do. Like, I just tried to get to the Colossus. I enjoyed the trip.
Yeah.
You know, I like those quiet moments getting there, but I didn't spend a lot of time hunting down lizards or whatever.
Yeah. That plot summary was super reductive. Like, I know that there is like an important NPC later on, then whose dialogue changes and, like, you know, recontextualizes like what the Titans are, but it still does come across as very slight and generic.
Yeah.
You know, and
which
good.
is okay, but again, like, if the game is about exploration and kind of this presentation, that it didn't work for me.
Right. So you start out in this tutorial area, which kind of walks you through your different verb sets until you get to this pyramid covered with eye-mounted doors, right? These doors they have to open by shooting eyes, which, okay, cool. And you have 3 bosses that you can go through, go to at the start.
Yeah, and that's kind of the there's these little hubs. This is kind of setting up the pattern for the game of these hubs, and then like just a handful of bosses in that hub. So the first one you fight is the Sludge Heart.
The first one you can fight. This is mostly arbitrary.
Yeah, it's well, this is the one that's right in front of you, though.
Oh yeah,
this is probably the first boss in the game, like the one that most people fight first.
Yeah. So Sludge Heart, it is a blob that has a heart inside of it, and this feels very much like a Zelda mid boss.
Oh yeah, yeah. As you hit it with arrows, it will split into smaller slimes, and they bounce around. They leave this kind of slowing creep.
Yeah.
Around, and the idea is you hit the section that has the heart in it enough to where it eventually exposes the heart.
And it's kind of the asteroids heuristic where the smaller portions get faster.
Yeah. And but it's so far, so, you know, it's pretty easy. Like, you just need to stay away. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. And you're learning, like, you know, you're learning kind of the distance that you're effective at. Like the arrow has just like a little bit of a curve to it. As you shoot it, depending on how much you charge it. So, like, you're really getting your feet on the ground here. This is one where timing doesn't really matter so much as aim.
Yes.
So that is that is worthwhile to note.
It's also teaching you just the basics of your physics, like getting a feel for how long it takes you to draw your arrow is really important in this game, because it's how long you can stay still. You can only draw your arrow while standing still, as well as shoot it while standing still. So once you shoot your arrow, unless you're just going to go gather it manually, you need to know, how long am I safe here? And this game this boss is a really forgiving boss to illustrate that, because it moves relatively slowly, even the small fast ones. And they don't even seem to they don't make a beeline for you.
Right.
They kind of bounce in this little zigzag pattern towards you, so you can get a feel for the physics of the game.
Yeah. There's a nice little kinesthetic nod here. As you charge up your arrow, it does a slight zoom in to kind of let you know that you're doing it. It's not enough to put anything important off the screen, but it is definitely more feedback than just the tiny animation on your sprite.
Yes. Yeah. Because I don't know if we mentioned that. This is one of the smallest characters you'll control. This game is so zoomed out.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing. And that's what I think what they're going for, is that scale thing. Like, they're trying to just show how small you are in relation to the size of these things. But that doesn't, it doesn't work. Like, if you just zoomed out Shadow of the Colossus until, the main character was as small as this, it wouldn't be as effective as literally getting all up in that shit. So you beat him, you pull out his soul at the end. It's this very big dramatic moment that I'm sure speedrunners hate. and then you head on over to the next boss we're going to cover. At this point is where it really kind of opens up. Eye Cube. It's
a Soul Reaver puzzle, Gary.
Yep. Which is frustrating. So this is the first time I felt like the game didn't do a good job of communicating something to me, because this is a boss that's in. No, this is the guy I was thinking of. Brain Freeze, the other ice sounding pun. Can we talk about Brain Freeze real quick since I already started segueing into that?
Yes.
Okay. Brain Freeze is a brain inside an ice cube, and there are these buttons on the cardinal directions that set up a fire in the middle.
Right.
And he's in an ice cube. It's like, all right, well, this does kind of violate that one hit thing. I don't need to hit him once I have to, but fine. And I spent a long time thinking I need to maneuver him over the fire.
Yes.
Because at no point do I think that like I should be able to set my arrow on fire. Partly because it's so not disposable, I think, is why I was like not thinking that.
Yeah, you would only ever shoot it through the fire on accident, or just
Yes.
in a fit of of experimentation. Most of the time, you are taking your shots, if you're taking your shots at all. Especially, I think early in the game, you are taking more shots than you would later. You are going to be shooting at the enemy. So the idea that like you would try it, I'm not actually sure if there's even a sprite difference when you shoot through the fire.
I think there is, but it's super tiny.
Yeah.
And the thing that was frustrating about this is in order to get to a boss later, you have to do this trick in a thing that actually does a good job of teaching you it.
Oh, yeah.
Like if that would have come if that would have been before this boss, it would have been classic. Like let's show you the trick and then you have to try to use it in an action sequence. Here it's, you just have to intuit. That's how you do it. And the frustrating thing is just like having to intuit isn't the frustrating part. The frustrating part is that like it really seems like you just have to maneuver him onto the flame because he slides off the walls a lot. Like it seems very possible. As far as I know, it's not though.
Right. The timing just doesn't work out. You have enough time. You have enough time to close the distance with a fully charged arrow between the flame and the eye cube or brain freeze. I'm doing it again.
But not their fault for their stupid pun names in their game that's supposed to make you feel things.
but they just the flame will turn off by the time it can get to the spigot or whatever. Yeah. So
eventually the idea is you trick him into hitting one of these platforms. It creates a flame in the middle of the room, and then you shoot through the flame and hit him, and then that exposes the brain, and you just hit the brain. That's easy. Why does this guy live in a room with a flame button?
Because video games. Like...
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just silly though. Yeah. Like it feels like, again, it's in some ways it is taking me out of the tone as much as the Yeti where you have to shoot an arrow into his butthole. Like it is just like all the,
you're making it sound like the Death Star run.
It's the camera in Quiet in MGS5. Like the arrow is the camera, and the Yeti's butthole is Quiet's butthole, and you just have to get as far up in there as possible. Give your camera pink eye the Kojima way, like
Kojima-tivitis.
Yeah, give yourself Kojima-tivitis through because the Titan, again, like the Colossuses all felt like they just lived in a place, like it wasn't weird that like the one that had the temples you had to go under lived by some temples because there are temples around. Yeah. Like nothing was this video gamey. And it's just like the second boss like I fought, and just like, okay. Anyway, so that's how you kill Brain Freeze. On to old iCube, the Soul Reaver boss.
iCube, the Soul Reaver boss. So I kind of dig this actually. So this is a cube. One of the sides is an eye. Again, continuing this eye theme for a lot of these. And the facing of the cube or of the eye matters. So you have to kind of like stay above or below it or to the side in such a way that you can charge a shot right when that face is exposed to you, and hope that it does not laser you in the meantime.
Yes.
So this is definitely timing based, whereas we're in a way that the other ones have not been.
It's a move we like to call Gleaming the Cube.
Yes.
And the I didn't have any particular problem with this guy. Yeah. Like this was satisfying to figure out. He moves kind of randomly. Like it feels like a little bit like I had a hard time predicting what he was going to do, but it wasn't so he was easy enough to avoid when he wasn't doing that it wasn't like I had 1,000 deaths. Yeah. That made it more frustrating. So I'm fine with this guy. This guy gets a pass.
Yeah. And also this shows something that a lot of the bosses take advantage of. And I think the game pulls off pretty well. Kind of this mixture of basic 3D stuff blending in with the pixel art because it is kind of like relatively like low res and anti-aliased. So like this thing moving around, it doesn't feel super out of place, even though it absolutely has to be 3D for this mechanic.
There's a boss later that shoots things up into the air that kind of go in an arc towards you that I think does a really bad job of that.
Yep.
Where I don't think it is telegraphed well enough whether you can go under something
Right.
or not. So that is something I won't say the game just does in general and well.
Yeah,
or
I
does
mean,
well in general.
Visually, like in terms of style.
Yeah, it looks fine.
Yeah.
And here it doesn't actually impact the gameplay very much.
Right.
But when it does, I don't think the game does a very good job of it.
Right.
Yeah, but he's fine. On to Goliath.
Yeah, this is the guy who's guarding the way out. And instead of going into a room, you actually have to just kind of take a shot at this rock golem to wake him up.
Yes. A lot of them, like the trick, like there's not really a trick. There's a trick to a couple of them.
Yeah.
But waking them up is just shooting them. And then that always sets you off as a disadvantage too. They have a little bit of a wind up, but you're always going to start without your arrow. Because otherwise you could position yourself in the right position to murder them right away. So his whole thing is that he has one fist that kind of stands in front of his heart.
Yeah.
And the other ones kind of, raise up and try to slam on you and move around the room. And the idea is if you can kind of make growing concentric circles outward, eventually his hand will take too long to get back. There'll be periods where no hand is guarding his heart.
Right. So you have to move in such a way that it lures both hands out, and neither of them can get back quickly enough.
Yes.
So you take your shot. This is a place where dodge rolling is mandatory. Like it makes the other fights easier, but like you're dealing with something that is kind of moving much faster than you can, moving over top of you and then slamming down. So you have to dodge roll, otherwise it's just going to keep up with you.
Yeah. I wish the dodge roll in this game was a little bit faster, but that's a minor complaint. Yep. Like I wish I moved a little bit faster when I was doing it, which resulted in some annoying deaths.
Yeah.
Just throwing that one little bit of control thing, I didn't know where else to put. So eventually, though, like he exposes his heart, you hit it, you take his soul, and this opens up the door behind him, and you rise up in this elevator to actually get to the open world. So this whole area is kind of a tutorial.
Yes.
And there's a door that has 7 eyes on it up at the top of this area, this huge area. And so, you have to light up the 7 eyes or whatever to get through.
Yes. And so you pretty much have the run of the place. You can fight every other Titan here until you get to the very end. But we're going to kind of go through these just in a relatively arbitrary order. Yeah.
Starting with the snow area.
Yeah, which you get to by swimming across a river. It's real pretty. Next.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good. It does feel weirdly empty to me in a way that like undercuts how pretty it looks to me too.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm just being complaining, but it's true.
It looks like really good pixel background art.
Yeah,
for me, which it's fine. Like on its own, it's fine. Yeah. But in the snow area, it introduces you to a couple of these puzzles. There's one that you can get to, I believe 2 actually, that you can get to right away. Let's talk about Stratus.
Yes.
Yeah. And go ahead.
So this is another area like similar to Yeti, but where I think the silliness of it kind of undercuts the tone they're going for.
Yeah.
Because essentially you're doing Knockdown Clown, or like that carnival game where the clown's mouth is there and you're knocking down its teeth. This is kind of a pillar that goes in and out of the ground. When it's out, it pushes you back with snow breath. And its arm tunnels under the ground, shoots up and shoots an ice trail at you.
Yeah, like a Metal Gear Rex laser. Kind of like straight out from the pillar.
Yeah.
And so you are trying to avoid this, and it's chasing you around while you attempt to take as many shots as you can at this kind of like buried head.
It's you're not taking the shots. You need it to knock out its own
I
teeth.
forgot about that. Yeah. You have to lure the Rex ray to in the direction of the teeth so it can knock it down, which exposes the red inside of the clown's mouth.
Yes, and
you can red moist inside of the clown's mouth.
Yes, where you dock your arrow. It is so you only have to get out one tooth. It's really hard if you do that. I ended up knocking out several teeth. Which just kind of made this into a weird test of patience because there's so much going on like in this boss fight. Like it just like has few too many factors. So like there are times where I'd line up the shot perfectly, but he would duck down under the ground, just like at the last second.
Yeah.
These ice lasers stay on the ground and it becomes a kill box. It's not just like a wall you can't go through. It's if you touch one of these after it's already ejected, it becomes a kill box. And like the weird thing about the kill boxes in this game is that, like, again, the same way the Titans don't always die in one hit, neither do you. Like, some
sometimes
things
you just get knocked over.
Some things just knock you over, and there's nothing to indicate what's going to knock you over versus what's going to kill you, which becomes a real thing with the Yeti, which, like, I didn't realize until well into that fight that you could get hit by this like a snowball.
Yeah, well, which just falls like snowflakes.
Yeah, exactly. And where what things actually just murder you instantly. So this actually murders you. It's just walking up to a wall made of ice kills you. So there's just huge swaths of the battlefield he'll make unavailable to you. So it just becomes this like patience of like, okay, I can't get up here where I would need to be to line up the shot to hit the tooth because there's an ice wall in the way. So now I just need to waste a few turns just setting him up down at the bottom, putting ice walls in areas that I don't need to be, and then just hope by the next time I can line up a shot, the mouth happens to stay up. Yeah. And it lasted a long time, which it feels like these boss fights shouldn't, like, this should be like Bushido Blade.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah, where you can win it with just one fit of grace.
If you know what to do.
Right.
Like the gulf between knowing what to do, like I'm way down with learning a pattern. But then the gulf between learning the pattern and being able to execute on it is too long for me.
Yeah. It puts a lot of onus on my dumb meat hands, and that is just not the kind of game that I'm terribly interested in playing. Yeah,
it's very, it ends up being very like Twitch based in a way that I'm not super into. So eventually you expose his big hot mouth and stick your arrow into it, and then he dies, and then you can move on to this Yeti, who I also don't like.
Yes,
I don't like any of the snow bosses. All three of these things I think suck.
Yeah. So you walk into this Yeti's cave, and he's kind of sleeping as a big ball of fluff. And his opening gambit is just to roll at you like Sonic the Hedgehog.
He throws snowballs.
Yep.
Then he rolls at you, and when he hits, it creates another ice wall.
Yeah. And
he does this 3 times before he eventually will stand still long enough for you to hit him in the butthole.
Right. And when he's standing still, doesn't he pound the ground and drop some icicles too?
I thought that was when he hit the wall, but maybe you're right.
Yeah.
He does it like right after he hits the wall then.
Yeah.
He kind of does a ground pound thing. But he just does those 3 moves. Like, it's a very easy pattern to learn.
Yeah.
And I just ended up hitting his butt like a bunch. And like I just, didn't do it straight enough or whatever. But like it is the amount of like, I don't know.
Like, just so the number of bosses where the gimmick is just figure out their movement patterns so you can get behind them is actually a real bummer.
Yeah,
because it stops feeling inventive like right away.
And that's classic video game stuff, right? Like, I'm not taking the game to task just for doing that at all.
Right.
This would have been a fine boss in a game where like other bosses didn't feel like that. And if like, the hit thing, whatever was going on with my hit, and I think it was just I needed to be like 90 degrees, like hit it straight on. But just the window of opportunity to do that is very short, and the punishment for missing it is just kind of kiting him for a long time.
Yeah.
I think you could technically get in before that like resting period he has, but it's so brief to where like it just became frustrating if like one little tiny thing was off, and I just had to like kite him around for a little while and hope that
hope the stars align.
And hope the way he was making the battlefield unusable for me didn't actually make it impossible to do it when my next opportunity came up.
Right.
There's another boss that's coming up that that was a big thing with.
Yeah.
In the castle area, but eventually you hit him in his cartoon exposed butt. Which again, I don't feel cool about that.
His Red and Stimpy butt exposed and just pink as all hell.
He does look like a Red and Stimpy character, kind of.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, this is the grandiose, like this is, you have me scaling vines to beautiful music while the wind blows and stuff, and then it's just like, oh, you had to hit him in the butt.
You have to burn the rope.
I'm not anti-butt.
You must build a boat. You must hit him in the butt.
Yes, you must what?
In the butt.
In the butt?
Huh. I never.
Yes, I don't. It didn't ruin the mood for me because the mood had already been ruined. But like, I didn't really get what they're going for with that. That feels like comic relief that is misplaced.
Yeah.
On to Onyxia.
Onyxia, which you can't do that.
Yeah.
Onyxia is already a thing. It's from Warcraft.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
It is just, I mean, you can name these things whatever you want.
But you can't.
Well, I mean, no, I'm saying you shouldn't have named it this because you had infinite other words
Right.
you could have chosen.
I understand that you can, but you can't.
It's like when I go into a street or a town and like, I always get mad when there are multiple streets that have the same name.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if one street and one's avenue, just that you have infinite words, like just choose a different word. It would make things so much easier to navigate.
Yeah.
I like so little patience for like, oh no, that's on Main, that's on 3rd Avenue, not 3rd Street.
Yeah.
Why?
It's like Tracy Jordan's 40-year-old son. I'm going to call it Microsoft. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like it's already a thing.
For trademark reasons, this is not actually Onyxia.
We're not all Manhattan. Like I get Manhattan, it makes sense because you live in a weird like murder grid, and like having just avenues and streets like east, west, north, south is really easy. The rest of the world doesn't need to follow those naming conventions. Anyway, Onyxia.
Yeah.
You get to Onyxia through a little puzzle.
Yeah, which I like. I dig it.
I dig it too. I just wish it had come before they expected me to do it in a boss fight.
Exactly.
Like this makes sense. This is actually pretty cool. Like the way you get here, where it's like you see that there's this line of torches around your save point, and then there is kind of a trail of inconspicuously unlit torches that lead to a frozen lake.
Right, and you have to fire your arrow through these torches to spread the fire to a point where, when you get to this frozen lake, you can take a shot at this frozen waterfall, which exposes a cave mouth.
Yeah, it's the Zelda-est thing in this game,
and really, it just made me feel like I should be playing Zelda.
Yeah, yep.
Like I was just kind of like, I would really love if there was more of this, and I understand that's not the point of what they're doing here. This is kind of the only time they have you actually do something, as opposed to just kind of moving in a exploratory way. It's super out of place, and I almost would have said like, I just cut it, because it hints at something that speaks more to me personally than what's actually here.
Same thing with the Lost Woods thing. Like just it's not adding anything. It's just because I'm saying that it sucks that there isn't more to do in the open world doesn't mean you add like 2 tiny little things.
Yeah.
That's worse than adding nothing. You eventually get to this. This is a big underwater frozen lake, and it's full of these little glacier islands. And the trick is the snake jumps up and attempts to kill you on them. He's got electric powers as well.
Yeah.
And you have to hit him in the tail. Is his weak point. So the idea is you bait him onto a platform, you get over to another platform in time to hit his tail as it's going down.
Yes, and he will destroy the platforms, and only after like he destroys enough of them will he go up and then kind of do this shock move that will drop more platforms down for you.
Yes.
And kind of a cool thing, if you fire your arrow and then draw it while you're standing on an island, like, Thor it back to yourself, it will actually, Newton's third law, move those islands closer together.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's a cool little detail that wasn't that useful for me in the fight. It's like, I didn't end up needing them to be, like, I ended up doing it on the lower right islands. And didn't need them to be closer. And maybe I lucked out.
It felt like it made more of the arena viable for that, which made it kind of okay that the enemy just kind of did what he wanted to.
Yeah. So you head down an elevator here. There are lots of elevators in this game. Going down to a fiery area.
Yes, the underground fire cavern, which is probably the closest this gets to like a really designed space. This is like the Demon's Ruins a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
With names that I defy anyone to tell these things apart.
Yeah, these are all the bosses are named like Dragon Riders of Pern protagonists.
Yeah. Or legendary Pokemon.
Yeah. There we go.
So the first one, Golquayan.
Yep. There are 3. There's one hidden one, Dennis Quayan, and then a 4th hidden one, which is Randy Quayan.
Marlon Quayan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So Golquayan, again, this is where they really start running together. This is a skull-faced block that has these spike ball hands on the end of chains.
Yes. And he kind of throws these and rotates around.
Right.
Is his thing. And you have to hit him in the back, but it's difficult to do.
Yes, he's got this kind of open furnace, like is in the basement of the Home Alone house.
Yes.
On his back. Yeah.
And there are these geysers of flame as well that shoot from the floor from time to time. Again, just like every arena has to be kind of busied up.
Yeah, and also very little warning about when these things are going to fire, and also very little visual indication of where they're at.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they look like little fires, but like you're kind of trained to ignore debris on the ground in this game because it never matters up until this point.
Right. So the trick is, because he is kind of like rotating himself around, you have to dizzy up the girl. You know, and I was going to work in something about his iris because of the eyes and the black balloon. Oh, well. But you get him angry, and then he starts doing this kind of like spin attack, which I got by counting how many times he spins, so I could know which way he was going to be facing when he finally like stopped.
Yeah, I just kind of took shots until one of them worked.
Oh, well, yeah. Because he has like a recovery period after he spins.
Yeah, and it's not like the recovery periods are very rarely enough time. If you're not starting in the right place, it's not enough time to move and charge up an arrow. You know, but you can hit him while he's rotating if you just happen to luck out and hit his back at the time. Like, in a way, they do kind of follow the rules, but in another more accurate way, they don't. Yeah, I mean, they do. Whatever. You kill this guy, he's fine. Next up is Rollquayan, who is one of two just, you know, lava sphere things. This is the rock lava sphere.
It's like the ball. It's like a D100.
Yes,
it's like the dice that comes with categories.
Yes, yeah.
And this feels a little bit like a different version of iCube, actually.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Where he rolls around, he leaves these fire trails again because that's a thing, and you just have to hit him in the eye.
Yeah.
Like there's no trick to making him expose his eye. His eye is exposed. You just have to luck out. And
you have to have a sense for like which part of the sine curve his eye is going to be on as he is rolling toward you.
Yes.
So it is less predictable than iCube, because iCube just goes on a grid and it works like a dice does.
Yeah, this guy can be, you know, there are lots of different angles. He also does like an attack where he lands on the ground, and it's a good time to hit him if you can do it right. But this guy's fine. Like I wasn't particularly irritated with him. I didn't you know, love it or anything either.
Yeah, another one where the 3D really works for me and like plays into the mechanic. Yeah. Yep. Molquayan, he's real cute. He's this cute sweating magma blob with this crystal sticking out of him.
This is the guy that shoots the lobbed projectiles that I was never sure whether I could go under them or not.
Yeah.
And died due to that several times.
And this feels like, you know, there are a couple of bosses that have some like different phases. Like this, this feels more complicated than it ought to be. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a real like defined gimmick to him as well, which is so he throws out spits out a bunch of these blobs, and then spits out a bomb, like a straight up bomb, and the bomb will blow up when you hit it. So the trick is to get him close enough to it when it blows up, and eventually he will become exposed, and you can actually take your shot at the inside of him, the crystal.
Yes, the crystal is his weak spot, but you can't just hit it, you know, the part that's sticking out of him. And so the trick to do that is you trick him into spitting the bomb. I feel like I'm giving Nintendo hints here, but no, like you're notice that he's inhaling. There are a couple of different bosses that do this. You have to shoot the arrow and then recognize that while it's inside of him and you're throwing it back to yourself, he moves with it. So you draw him back toward the bomb so that he will hit it and explode it.
I didn't end up actually doing that.
Oh, yeah.
He will, if you, by using the walls and stuff, you can make it so he spits the bomb out close enough to himself anyway.
Oh, wow.
And can bait him into just kind of getting close to it. I think the way that it took me a billion tries. I think the way that you described is probably easier, but I didn't end up doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the end of the fire area. You can take another elevator up to go to the castle area, and all the rest of these places we're going to go. Well, you could have gone to them in any order, but they all have 2 bosses apiece as opposed to the 3.
So the castle area has again another. I know this boss because I watched him online. I didn't fight him. I didn't know how to unlock him or get him to aggro.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. How do you get him to aggro?
Which one, Avarice or Alhanan?
Avarice.
Avarice. You just have to go into his room, I think, and you have to. So you climb down a ladder, go into a treasure room, and there's a big treasure chest. And when you walk up to it, he aggroed me.
There's no when I went in, there was no treasure chest.
Oh, really?
It's possible at the time I went in, I hadn't killed enough bosses or something like that.
Huh.
But these, it was not. There's no treasure chest there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a pretty fun fight. It is a mimic.
He's got cool music.
Yes. And that's the music I'll use for this section. And he's got the tongue, he's got the teeth, and his ranged attack is kind of spitting these coins at you. Right. There's only one moment where he's really vulnerable. As he kind of like does these teleportation smashes around, which is like he's got this spread shot that he does with the coins, but when he reels up to do like a single like real quick sniper shot, his tongue is exposed for just like a split second. So you have to be standing still when he's doing his most kind of like precision deadly attack in order to hit that. And so it's incredibly satisfying when you do it, but yeah, it is very difficult, especially if you can't start the fight.
Yeah, I just didn't get a chance to fight him. I watched it online, but that's all I did.
Yeah.
Which was fine. Cool music. I like a mimic. I'm never going to turn down a mimic. Boy, am I looking forward to mimics being back in Dark Souls 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you fight him. I did fight Elhanan, the legendary Titan Slayer.
Yeah, this is our Artorias figure.
I think that's the idea. It doesn't Goodness, it didn't work for me. So you,
there's nothing.
Yeah, his arrow is in a wall, so you shoot the arrow to trigger him, and he kind of zips around the room. He shoots his one arrow, which is like yours, and has electricity behind it. But then he has little arrows that he shoots that are like the shot speed is just like through the roof.
Yeah.
And like these things are really fast.
Yeah, and the big arrow will take down the columns that are giving you cover from the small arrows.
Yes,
and this is a really tricky fight because he's wearing armor. You can't directly attack him. In order to make him vulnerable to a shot, you have to shoot the arrow first, which makes his armor phase out and reveals his skeleton zombie self. You have to draw your own arrow back in and hit him while he's exposed.
Yes, or if you can get your arrow, if you happen to just like the stars line up perfectly, you can actually get your arrow back and hit him. But the window is very short that he is armorless.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer. And again, it's boy are the patterns coming out now where like the enemies just create a swath of the battlefield that has electricity or ice or fire or something like that you can't do anything with, which makes the mechanic of this game, which is lining up a shot, just complicated. Like not in an interesting way to me. It's like taking away options, which is usually a good thing. Like that's something that I want, but it just ends up being like, oh, now I just need to dodge this guy for another go round and hope that the next time he cuts off a swath of the battlefield, it's more advantageous to me.
Yeah. And, and it feels, I don't know, like they're playing against what it wants you to do. You know, or at least it is taking the established mechanic and then making it as hard for you to do it as possible, which is fine, but it's in really kind of bad ways.
I've always I've thought many times about the what things are sacrificed up on the altar of difficulty. In games oh, this needs to be hard, and you just push it a little bit too far because you're afraid it'll be easy, and people are very scared of a game being too easy.
Yeah.
I can't remember, I can remember, but it's very rare that I play a game where I'm like, this is way too easy.
Yeah.
This just doesn't happen that often. I think that the people who are testing these things and making them sometimes just know them so well that they're assuming, things that about the player that are maybe not true.
Yeah, and it falls under the just balance is hard. Balance
is hard. I get it. Yeah, I get it. I'm not mad.
Yeah.
It just is a big reason why I had no fun playing this game.
Yeah.
Very little fun. I like the next boss we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Here's a ray of positivity. I like Kole Hevel.
Yeah, down in the graveyard area, and this is the only real boss that you fight in the graveyard. So Kole Hevel is he is a mask. He looks kind of like one of the what is it? Phantasm? Phanto? Yeah, Phanto from Mario 2. And his whole thing is he's a mask, so he's very flat, and he always turns to face you. And he kind of shoots these spread shots. And this is, I think, one of the only boss fights that explicitly requires you to use to have Gary's epiphany there, which is the arrow is just as deadly on its way back.
Yeah, that's actually what they named that epiphany officially. Like if anything is ever hit with the backside of an arrow,
yeah,
it's called getting a real Gary's epiphany.
Yeah, it's a
yeah. Yeah, it's a drink in some states.
What's in a Gary's epiphany, Gary?
One arrow and water. But yeah, so that's the idea, is you just have to stick the arrow somewhere and then maneuver him so he's between you and the arrow, and you have enough time to pull the arrow towards you. But I like it. I think that was pretty fun, and figuring that out was fun.
Yeah,
because I spent a lot of time just trying to get behind him, and it just doesn't. Doesn't work.
He turns to face. He's on a pivot. Yeah,
because so many of the bosses that you fight are, do that same kind of thing. Like they just, their exposed weak point periods are so short that it may as well be this.
Right.
It's not literally impossible, but it feels impossible. So I tried a lot to just try to get behind him, and eventually figured it out.
Yeah, the other boss is actually really well hidden. At this point, you probably you've killed enough Titans to go to the final area, but this guy is a freebie if you can find him. Which the path it's hidden by some scenery. The only indication is like a small little dirt patch as an indent in kind of like a rock wall. And so you go behind and you walk on these kind of invisible paths marked by your shadow until you get to something that is explicitly very Shadow of the Colossus-esque. You're climbing up this wall until you realize, oh, these vines are a beard and those are some eyes, and he starts talking.
Yeah, and as you're going up, you hear this little dialogue that tells you, this is the story part of the game. It's different in hard mode as well. I didn't do this, but I watched it online.
Yeah, so he's kind of, giving you the, what is this all for? Or do what thou must, you have paid a high toll indeed. No.
Yeah, this is a peaceful land.
Yeah.
and its creatures are nonviolent and have flesh.
He calls you the second soul, less encumbered than the last, so maybe Elhanan, he was corrupted by whatever he was encumbered by. You fight
the soul later.
Okay,
as like a thing. So I think that's what he's referring to.
Okay. And he calls your arrow an abomination, right?
Yes.
In the hard mode dialogue, he really gives you kind of like the lore. He says that the truth created him, and he in turn created you, and now you coming back to kill him, and thus the truth is the cycle repeating itself over and over again.
Yeah, it's cycly-wikely. But again, it's like that's kind of a story, but like also kind of not. And like I get that. It's not like I want like Titan Souls, the Arrow Chronicles. Like I don't need like a whole lot, but just it's going for a mood and kind of a feeling more than anything. But I just don't think it was that successful at it.
It feels uncharitable to call it generic. Like that feels like a pretty harsh word, but like a lot of this feels a little bit like table stakes for like the stuff that it's cribbing from. It doesn't really subvert either Dark Souls or the Shadow of the Colossus, either the notion that you're killing these gigantic, beautiful beasts, or the idea that this is a cycle. It just kind of plays it real straight in such a way that like I really would rather this be left inferred.
Or just left out entirely.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for me to think that this game, as it is, like not judging what they were going for, but what they actually put on the screen, would be that much worse as like a menu navigation.
Yeah.
Like how much would it lose? Like if you really like going through these big empty spaces, that's fine. It didn't evoke the kind of mood that it wanted me to, and it actively added to frustration most times.
Or just do it like Burnout Paradise, where you make the run once, and then when you respawn, you have a button that you can press that'll start you back at the boss fight.
Yeah, that would have been ideal. Yeah. Just knock down some of the ending like dying animations and stuff like that. Like just make it, Hotline Miami.
Yeah.
Which is another game where you die in one hit, everything else dies in one hit. But it totally works and is a game I really love.
Yeah.
Because and Hotline Miami totally would not have worked if you had to take the car ride to the place again.
Right.
Like that would have been the one thing that would have ruined that game. And this game embraces that.
Yeah.
As a thing.
It's all car ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not all car ride, but hyperbole is the order of the day. Yeah.
So there's a Lost Woods.
Yeah, there's a forest area. Boy, am I not crazy about that.
No, I think we talked about it in like the Link to the Past episode. Like, I'm not real crazy about that anyway.
Neither am I. In general, like, I wasn't crazy about it in Zelda 1 nor in Link to the Past. Like, I just kind of think this is a shitty puzzle.
If you have, like, you just need kind of stronger indications. Like a game that did it okay, weirdly, is Paper Mario. Mm-hmm. Like, where you have, like, because every time it was a weird little, like, spot the difference puzzle at every junction, and it's like, I'm doing something.
Yeah.
You know, and then the worst possible way is if it's trial and error. There may be more to this than trial and error. Mm-hmm. If so, like, you know, like, you'll find a place and there's an arrow that's pointing diagonally up or left. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll go one of those two directions. And it just happened to work. And I don't know if I did it right, or if I did it right, I don't know why.
Yeah, I just eventually ended up memorizing it. Like, I trial and errored, and then, like, I'm going to be making this run over and over again. So I might as well commit this to memory and write it down, because otherwise, you know, fuck that. I'm not going to just resolve this over and over again.
Yeah. So the first boss we're going to fight here is Vine Thesis.
Yeah.
Or Vinicius, but like, I like Vine Thesis.
I like Vine Thesis too. The boss fight is okay. This is another one where the 3D can kind of work against you, because it's this lily pad with the petals up, kind of guarding whatever's inside, and these tentacle spike vines that are hitting in this kind of like radial dance pattern with this cloud of pollen that is chasing you to make it so you can't just like stay in one place.
Yes. Yeah. And kind of the idea here is that you can shoot down its petals when it's inhaling. It has 4 petals on the cardinal directions, and that will eventually expose its actual thing, because like every boss, you have to hit it more than once. So you do that. You can expose more than one petal, similar to the teeth of a tooth boy, where like the idea is you can make it easier for yourself when you eventually take the shot. How precise do you want to be if you want to spend a little bit of time kiting the boss? Yeah,
you know, if you want to be young and scrappy like your country, you know, you don't want to throw away your shot. Yeah, America's Army. But yeah, this is a visually impressive fight that definitely feels like it was like a demo thing. To me.
He's I don't think he's actually in the demo. One of the things that's on the wiki is you can see the ones that were actually in the original demo.
I think that it might be. I remember playing the demo when this first came out, because I didn't feel like spending $15 on it, honestly. I remember playing the demo. I think it might have just been the first 3 that we saw, or it was like the tutorial area, because I definitely remember the 2 cube ones.
Yeah,
which is a fine enough demo. The other forest boss is Obello, which is a goofy mushroom kind of guy. He's got an eye on his back or his front, whichever one you want to consider. He mostly rotates to keep it away from you, but he jumps up and down, like does these pounds, and then shoots these crosses of spores.
Yes, and you can get touch a fuzzy, get dizzied in this fight. There are certain spores that, you know, certain things on the screen that will kill you. Some of them just make your screen distorted and weird.
Some of them just make it more likely that you will die.
Yeah. Some of them will kill you. Some of them will just set you on a path that ultimately leads to you being stabbed by a roommate that you found on Craigslist, whose name is Scorch. So
what is that?
That's what happens if you do acid, dude.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you get scorched. Don't get scorched. You don't want to get stabbed over not cleaning the toilet.
No. How dare I? No, I don't.
Yeah.
Ugh. But yeah,
you want to be the scorched. You don't want to get scorched. It's scorch or be scorched.
I like that, you know, look to your left, look to your right. If you don't see a scorch, the scorch is probably you.
Yeah, then you're going to stab a roommate over not cleaning the toilet. And you can't clean it with pee.
No.
That's Scorch's one rule, is that no matter how much you want to, like, no amount of pee is going to make a toilet clean.
Right. Scorch is very attuned to the chemistry of toilet cleaning.
Yeah, he's read that Wikipedia entry on how urine is sterile as well, but he doesn't buy it. Scorch don't play that.
Scorch's views are pretty entrenched vis-a-vis hygiene.
Yeah, he's like, Scorch cares about 2 things: doing Sid, and toilet hygiene. And that's Scorch, baby.
Does Scorch have hair? I'm picturing Scorch with a shaved head, not like in a white supremacist way.
Scorch has shaved head and shaved eyebrows, but a big bushy beard.
Okay, cool.
He looks like an understudy bassist for Slipknot.
Yep. Scorch carries he carries an ace of spades where his driver's license should be.
Yeah. Yep. And when he gets pulled over, he shoots the cop and drives away.
That's a good
After
prank.
showing him his cool ace. Yeah, it's a cool goof. And that's what happens if you do mushrooms and do hallucinogens and SIDS.
Yep.
So
Oh man.
don't do it. Because you'll die.
This is so dumb. I love this character. I love this fiction.
Yeah,
Oh,
Scorch is a winner, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the once you have killed 7 titans, you're allowed into the inner sanctuary, where you kind of pass through this gate covered by shade, and there is one kind of titan that you have to kill before you get to the final boss rush kind of area,
which is a reuse, more or less.
Yep, goal set.
Yeah, which like you've run it feels like you've run out of ideas even before this point.
Mm-hmm.
But here, boy have you, because it's another Goliath. And it's not like Goliath was like so good, you know,
Yeah.
like it doesn't like recontextualize Goliath. It's just, here he is. He's goal set now.
Right. And this doesn't feel like a final exam either.
No.
Like he doesn't
No.
incorporate a lot of elements that would be considered like interesting.
I don't know what you couldn't do like a final exam boss in this game because your verb set is so limited and the actual gimmick to each boss is just like patience and waiting for them to expose themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you can't iterate on that and have that repeat itself as kind of a greatest hits thing. It wouldn't really work.
Yeah. But this just kind of is another boss of the stripe of get him to fuck himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just by setting up the conditions so he can do so. So like Goliath, he slams his fists. And sometimes you can get him to slam down on this button.
Yes. Yeah. The button.
The button.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he does this, you have to kind of dodge his reprisal of fist attacks and then shoot its heart before it can fire its laser. So like you just hit that. I don't know what the button does to make him so angry, but he kind of gives you all his heat until, you know, he gives too much heat and you punish him for giving you all that heat.
Yeah. Yeah. With an arrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get to the not the secret super final boss, but the real, you know, the final boss for all our intents and purposes. Soul.
Yeah.
Here, who when you come in, he's meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And
You just shoot him down, right?
yes.
And you accept the soul.
Yes. However, there's still a little bit of soul left.
Yes. And so you have to fight a version of yourself that can do pretty much everything you can do, except it can also shoot out those big balls of electricity. So it's a little bit like Dark Link, except less fair.
Yeah, it's a little bit like Dark Link. The trick or what have you, like what I ended up doing is just kind of trying to manipulate where he would be after a string of attacks and just kind of hope and predict that he was there. Because he moves really quickly and like I kind of had to be like shooting the arrow before he got there for it to work. Eventually though, you know, that works. Eventually you can get him.
Yeah.
And then you suck him in, you get credits.
Yep. And you get this shot of a gigantic door that remains closed.
Yes,
Now.
because they still want you to play.
Yep.
To get truth.
Yes.
The actual final boss. Is this if you have every other Titan?
Yeah. So if you've killed all the Titans as opposed to just the bare minimum to get in.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, so you get all of the Titans, and you eventually get to fight Truth, which again I just watched on YouTube because I wasn't gonna do it.
Yeah, that would have been honestly more time. And I understand that sounds bad because, you know, this is our job, but yeah, I watched this on YouTube as well. It looks cool, right? Like you are, you are, you know, a black silhouette against this pure white background, and he starts out as this kind of like inky tentacle monster inside of a ring.
He's a Patapon.
Yeah, he is.
He looks like a Patapon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this has multiple phases. So kind of again going a little bit against the thesis of the game, which I feel bad holding it against the game. I don't know.
I don't. I think that like the concept again is just that like one shot thing, and you can do that, and you can do it with boss fights. Like there are boss fights in Hotline Miami that work. Like it doesn't. You just have to be able to make me like be able to rapidly iterate, and it feels amazing. You get that same point, that same feeling of like, oh, I fucking did it.
Yeah.
You know, and it just you don't have to cheat your own premise for it. You know, make the person. You know, hard to hit because they're moving in a pattern that's interesting, or they're too aggressive and you have to figure out when you can attack back, which they do, but then they just always add another layer. Like I just have the sense that like they're like, oh, this can't be too easy. And probably because it's so short.
Yeah.
Right? Like if this game was a little bit easier, it would be like 2 hours and not 4 hours. You know, the game clock in any given play, if it doesn't count reloads and walking, is going to be really short.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll hold it against it because they should have. It's like a thing they decided not to solve, or like the way they decided to kind of patch over it was inelegant and frustrating, as opposed to like going to the drawing board and figuring something else out.
Yeah. So I suppose I should say I feel less bad holding it against it. I feel more bad harping on it. It feels like a little bit like, yeah, we've a little bit made our point, but like it pops up in so many ways. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. To be fair, it's like I don't think anyone listening to this is unclear on our takes. But yeah, so I mean, we can stop bringing it up. But
here at the very end.
Yeah, so at the very end, we'll go back and edit it out every time we say it.
Okay, cool. No, but by which I mean to say, like, yes, this is a multi-phase boss fight, and it makes sense. You know, if they're going to do it for the final boss, where you have to kind of take out this ring that is around it, and avoid its eye and mouth sperms that fly directly at you. And then once you set the interior core loose, it kind of becomes the Shuma Gorath. And starts like walking around with these tentacles firing lasers at you. And so you just have to find your opportunity to take out the eye.
Yes. Yeah, it looks a lot like Shumagorath. Yeah. And you shoot the eye and eventually you absorb all of these souls.
Yeah, like you don't just absorb the soul of the truth, you actually like suck in all of these rings of runes and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're probably the made up language for the other Titans, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And then it zooms in ominously on you again, all black and silhouette with kind of these ill-defined edges around you.
I like that it's like a pixel art that's really close up.
Yeah,
like that. I think that's actually pretty cool looking. Here,
and the screen goes black, and then the eye opens up again, with the idea being probably that you became the truth.
Yeah, probably because that's what happens to Shadow of the Colossus.
Wheels within wheels.
Yeah. So I guess that's maybe the idea. If that was supposed to have an impact, it didn't. I mean, I didn't do it either, I guess. But like,
it was just kind of
even looking at it, just looked cool. It's a cool design thing.
Oh yeah, and like it is good horror timing. Like, oh, that's creepy. Okay.
Yeah. But it just the stakes weren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that ends up being the real Titan souls.
Yes.
And then that's it.
Yeah, so there are different challenge modes you can do after this. There's hard mode, where everything just gets a little bit more difficult. The timing gets more stringent. There's also a version where you can't dodge roll.
Oh yeah,
which seems fucking crazy to me. But like, more power to you if that's something that gets to you.
There also in the hard mode you can, and this is just something I know from looking at the wiki, you can kind of learn. Or fight like harder, like dark versions of the bosses as well. Like in addition to just the everything being a little bit harder. They're like in the forest, you can take a different path and fight the dark version of the plant monster or whatever.
Yeah, I'm down for that kind of secret, but.
Yeah, me too. Like if I dug it more, like I'm glad that's there. And like I've been mean, like it's nothing against these dudes, right? Like it's like I don't blame them. Like I put myself in their shoes where like I do a game jam game that explores an idea that was just like, oh, what if this? Okay, and then everybody loves it. Yeah, and then you get like a publisher reaches out. Like, of course you're going to make the game, and when I was backseat quarterbacking, it's like I don't know the way to stick closer to the premise.
Oh yeah.
I don't actually know the answer to that. I would have liked the game more if they would have. And I get that maybe they couldn't. Like there was a time constraint, or maybe they were just sick of working on it and they didn't want to do it anymore. Like all the super valid things. Yeah. But I can only look at the final result and how much fun I had with it and how successful I think it is. They're not bad people. I'm sure they're really great people. Yeah. I didn't have very much fun playing this game at all. Yeah. And I don't want to play it again. And yeah.
I thought so. I definitely don't take as much umbrage to this game as you do. I thought it was fine. They're, you know, like I ceased being frustrated after a little while. It's just like, all right, well, I'll go back and try it again because I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like, there's some of these that I need to fight, and I'll go around and figure out which are the kind of easiest 10 that I can beat, right? Because I don't want to just do the bare minimum, but you know, I'll go around and do this. It's kind of like, yeah, this like, but like you shouldn't. I don't know. You shouldn't have to take a workman-like approach to it. Sometimes it feels like, you know, sometimes that is appropriate, but here it doesn't, and this just gets kind of like a solid okay from me, mostly because I'm willing to extend like a little bit of goodwill for like presentation, but I want to like it more because I think the core idea there is good, but like again, just that idea of overextending, you know, a kernel of an idea that is okay at a smaller scale, or that is okay when it is kind of more pure and more focused. You know, it just kind of it's a bummer that it spreads itself so thin as to like wear out its welcome. It feels like a real simple way to say it, but it also feels kind of accurate. It's, you know, it's only like a 3-hour long game, but like there are definitely considerations that they could have taken to put a better foot forward. It feels like, I don't know exactly what those are because again, this is complicated. You know, we're just here playing it and talking about it, but like, yeah, I found myself, I don't know, like almost probably giving it more of a benefit of the doubt than it likely deserved.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, it's not like it's not a war crime.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I wanted to like it too. You know, like I was pushing to do it for the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I was like, oh, I really have, this has been on my list forever to play. It's a short game. It's going to fit well into the season because we need to play something that didn't require a lot of preparation when we're kind of on these double time and doing, you know, multiple games in a time that we usually do, you know, one.
Right.
So my thought was, you know, this would make a lot of sense. And I remember kind of liking the demo.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, you can do that thing where you take one tiny game idea and extend it out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a lot of indie games are based on that. It's just not every tiny game idea is worth extending out, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And this is one of those where
extending out isn't always a virtuous thing, right?
Yeah.
Like extended out is not always better than.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, this would have been cooler as like just living as a Flash game,
mm-hmm.
you know, that you can play and be like, oh, that's kind of a neat idea.
Yeah.
You know, maybe somebody will expand upon that and do it in a more interesting way, but
yeah.
And part of it is a personal bias against like one-hit deaths. Mm-hmm. Like people, I mean, this thing we talk about when we talk about difficult, like what we talk about when we talk about difficulty in Dark Souls, my favorite Raymond Carver novel, is that the thing that can one-shot you in Dark Souls is very rare.
Right.
Like if you have full health, like you're very unlikely to get one shot.
Yeah.
Because I think one-shotting is bad, like inherently like a bad game thing.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to be able to, like my favorite games let me make mistakes because through making mistakes is how you learn.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like it takes away the consequences for me. I don't feel like a game is neutered by allowing me to fuck up a couple times. I think that's like almost a necessary thing.
Yeah.
You know, and you can gloss over that. Like again, like Hotline Miami or Super Hot, where like the idea is like, yes, you die in one hit. You can't make these mistakes. But it's so fast to try again. It may as well have not even happened. Like getting killed in Hotline Miami is the same thing as taking a hit in Ninja Gaiden, as far as the actual cost and your time and your patience.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's just like, it's good to be able to bounce back from something.
That's what I want. Like I want to be able to, like, that's how you learn. And that's like you still get that satisfaction of the final perfect run. And it's not marred by the fact that you didn't do it, you know, in one shot, at least not for me.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite like Dark Souls moments are where I got through it barely.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like I had no right to get through this, but I lucked out, and that can feel really good.
Yeah.
You know, because of this here, it's like I lucked out on all of these. It just took me a gillion goddamn tries. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't work for me.
I will say there were moments where it felt really good, like where it was a dopamine flood. When you get that one narrow shot, like that for me, like when that happened a handful of times, like, hey, that's pretty cool. If this game was more than 5 hours, I probably would have vetoed it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like, yeah, this but looking at it and seeing that it was such a small, slight investment, it was kind of like, yeah, let's do it. But like, yeah, man, oh man, if this was longer, it would not have been
no
tenable.
No. And for me, I mean, it didn't feel like it was just that it was too long. It wasn't. I mean, there's some of that, but it also just like, I don't think this was ever going to work for me. Yeah. Maybe it works for you, and that's great. I wouldn't take that away from you if I could. I'm glad, and I wish the people who made it all the luck in the world. I don't think they're inherently bad game designers. I just think that this game doesn't work.
Right.
Yes, but what do you think? We have some responses we're going to roll into this episode.
Yep.
Because we're not going to do an extra episode. So I'll go ahead and get started here with David. David says via contact. Gameplay wise, I thought the game was solid. Figuring out that what you needed to do and how to execute it was a solid loop that more or less kept me satisfied throughout the game. I only wish the run up to the bosses was a little shorter. In a world with no enemies but the bosses, I would have preferred to just have respawned at the boss's door. Also, hard mode can shoot itself. That was brutal. Lore-wise, I thought this did a good job of crafting a neat little story, accented by being able to see all the bosses' names once you earned the truth for some extra flavor, plus the 3 speeches by the first soul. In case it isn't brought up, he says 3 different things depending on when you go to him with no kills, before the soul boss, and after. It creates a nice little world if you want to look for it.
Yeah, I only got the one dialogue because I didn't play this game more than one time, and I saw 2 dialogues, one for hard mode or one for
Yeah, I wonder how you go to him with no kills. Like, I wonder, like, in New Game Plus, you can just walk directly to the soul.
Possibly, or maybe you start after the tutorial, or maybe the tutorial bosses don't count.
Okay, maybe man is the real monster.
Yeah. So the wiki only gave us kind of those 2 interpretations that I saw. Yeah, but naturally, just playing it normal, getting to him after killing a good number of the bosses was just the hey, how dare you? Where the fuck do you get off?
Yeah, how dare you?
So I'm going to butcher this name again. I know you've written in several times. I should know by now, but Kian writes in via contact saying, I found this game extremely frustrating. If I had to pick a specific reason, I would say that it is because the windows for each boss's weaknesses are too small. As Gary has mentioned on a number of other games, it is very annoying when you figure out what you have to do long before you are actually able to do it. I won't go on too long about this, but I just want to say that I was only able to beat the Archer Knight because I found a safe spot in the arena, and I'm pretty positive that I beat the Soul through sheer luck. Titan Souls is easily one of the worst games that I've ever pushed myself through. Oh well, one more month till Dark Souls 3.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not, for me, it's not one of the worst games I've played.
Yeah.
But it is not I'm not super into it.
Mm-hmm.
As elaborated. He also mentions I didn't know about this game, Neo.
Yeah,
is coming out, which I guess is supposed to have some Souls DNA in it.
Take a look at it. It should be legally actionable.
Really?
So this was announced at the PlayStation Experience toward the end of last year. I didn't know about it either. A lot of people have been bringing it to my attention, like either on Twitter or just kind of bringing it up ambiently as another Souls-alike. It is developed by Team Ninja, the Ninja Gaiden people. Mm-hmm. And if you take a look at it, it is kind of like set in a samurai world. Think of like Onimusha played like a Souls game.
Okay. Hopefully it'll have all of the lore implications and gameplay that I expect from Other M. That's Team Ninja 2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Although the story was Nintendo
yes.
in that one. Yeah. But yeah, it looks fine. Like I look at it and I think, that could probably be another Lords of the Fallen situation.
Yeah.
I'm curious because like I like Ninja Gaiden, like the 3D ones. Like those are fun, like really demanding character action kind of games. This looks a little bit slower, a little bit more kind of deliberate than that. And the visual style is pretty cool. But yeah, it's not one of the situations where I'm like gonna get my hopes up that this is the next successor.
Yeah, I have not seen that, and I haven't actually played the Ninja Gaiden games either, so I'm not totally sure.
They're okay.
I mean, I believe it. It's not for lack of like interest that I had never played them. I just never got around to it.
Yeah.
At some point, we'll get around to talking about the end of the show. I think that we're both just kind of not talking about it on the air that much because Bloodborne 2 might get announced,
right?
And then just make us, seem like idiots. But the thing I keep saying and is true is that we're not going to end on a weird, like, we're going to take no risk that involve us ending on Lord of the Fallen, like the Lords of the Fallen situation.
Yeah.
So as much as sugar as I've talked about Lords of the Fallen in this episode, that's not going to be the thing we go out on.
No, we've discussed our plan. Like we've discussed what happens when we both turn the keys on either side of the submarine.
And what that means is that there are going to be some Souls-alikes, things that come out that don't get covered on the show. But that's going to have to be okay because we can't just it would be just sad to keep the show running just to cover whenever an indie game came out that had a Souls mechanic.
Right.
Like we have other plans for other stuff to do if the show does indeed end. And we recognize that like there are people who listen to the show who are just like into Dark Souls, who don't follow us on other stuff, and that's sad. But that's okay. Yeah. Because the alternative to get around it is not acceptable. Like the version of this show that just kind of like runs in its tracks and putters for years and years. It's just not.
It's not something I'm interested in doing.
Yeah, totally not worth our time. Like not in a mean way. Like I love doing the show, but just kind of like just being on Souls-alike watch, forever. Like we like other games. Like we this is part of a whole podcast thing. Yeah. So that won't happen.
Right.
So I think that it's probably pretty safe to say that we will get the next major crop of Souls-alikes, possibly like Eternal Ring or something, like another old From game. But there's going to be some stuff we're going to miss, and Neo might end up being one of those. Or Neo, is it? I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to sound a little bit like Chinese, possibly.
Yeah. Neo. So that might be something that ends up. We might get it, we might not. I mean, I'll check it out regardless, even if it's not for the show.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I'm still interested in games that are like this, but we have other ideas for other shows, and we're moving on some of them right now. But like this is a big time commitment to do, and sometimes you need to know when to call it quits.
Yeah, and when From calls it quits seems like a really good, kind of metric for that. Yeah. I think. But that said, I would be way happier if they decide not to do that.
Right. Like if
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
If I have my choice, or even if they do something like, what if From decides to take kind of their design philosophy and do a side-scrolling game? Like I'm all over that, and we'll cover it.
Yeah. But like From is at the center of it.
Yeah, exactly. Like From is the magic touch, and the more I play these games that kind of are inspired by and are related to, that is, I've been critical of that auteur kind of like Miyazaki touch thing. I don't think it's necessarily Miyazaki touch. I think that it is like it's a team that like knows what the fuck they're doing with this stuff.
It's the studio's ethos, and that's a little bit why I asked that question at the beginning, which is like, has there been one that has been successful at that?
Because I mean the thing, like Shadow Tower Abyss is more successful at feeling like Souls than Dark Mouse, which is copying the entire control scheme from Souls. Like it is, or even just Shadow Tower 1. It would be. I'm more interested in like the studio is the magic ingredient. I think,
and it makes as much sense as anything, because otherwise, like it sprawls out and becomes untenable in a way that I'm not really comfortable with.
Yeah, and eventually we're doing, I don't know. I was trying to think of a really outlandish example, but the outlandish examples that came to mind were things that like it wouldn't be that outlandish to do. But you play enough degrees of separation, everything will connect back to Souls. Like there's that Twitter that like it's like Dark Souls Twitter, which is just incredible, because the comparisons people make is like the last Mario and Luigi game. They're like, it's like it's the Dark Souls of the Mario and Luigi RPGs. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, no, this is just, it's become a new cliche.
Yeah.
And trust me, I understand using Dark Souls as a cliche. We do it all the time.
Yeah, but hopefully our comparisons to things are like Dark Souls actually are like Dark Souls and aren't paper sticker saga or whatever. So thanks for listening to this. I understand like this has been more negative than we generally are in this show. But like I feel like all of that is there on the page, and we're coming up on some cool stuff. Yeah, I mean there are Lords of the Fallen moments that were this negative. Like the show has not been, and we did that Chalice Dungeon episode. Like we're negative from time to time.
Yeah.
I might like Titan Souls more than I like the Chalice Dungeons.
Oh, definitely. Oh my God, Gary.
Yeah. Because that's saying something. Somebody on Twitter asked me whether I like it more than Soul Reaver. And it's like, no, it's better than Soul Reaver. It's got that going for it. So it's just, it's not a dumpster fire. It's just a dumpster.
Which serves a useful purpose. You can put some bricks in there if you want.
Yeah, I can put rotting food that I don't want anymore inside you, Titan Souls. Anywho, what are we doing next time, Cole?
Well, Gary, next time we are doing another kind of special transmedia episode about the Souls of Darkness book that you wrote, and also the Labyrinth, which is a game a movie that inspired said book written by you.
Yeah, and parts of it look like the Chalice Dungeons. So that's the connection. It is tenuous. But, it's the reason why we're doing that is because it ended up timing out right to give us the perfect amount of time to cover Shadow Tower Abyss.
Yes.
Which I already mentioned. And if you have not played it, it's phenomenal.
It's really good.
It's really good. It feels I love Shadow Tower. This feels like a lot more like a first-person Dark Souls. Yeah. Even more so than the Ancient City, I think. Or first-person Bloodborne, given that there are guns and fedoras and stuff in it.
Yeah. So we haven't decided on what the split is going to be for that. Just because I'm not far enough into it to make that call. And Gary, I don't know if you are either. But it's going to be kind of like the Shadow Tower series. It's going to be 2 regular episodes and then an appendix. So we'll try and put out a call when we know we're going to do that. But writing in about Abyss sooner rather than later is going to be good. If you can't experience Abyss for yourself because, PS2 emulation is tricky, our friend Allison is actually doing a Let's Play series. That Gary, could you be so kind as to put that into the show notes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's annotated, and she's doing a really good job of kind of like getting across what's cool and weird about this.
Yeah, and give it a shot. Like, try to play it. I think. I mean, we said that about Shadow Tower. We said that about the Ancient City, and some people are probably sick of us, saying that. But like this, it's really good. Like it is atmospheric and cool and looks good and feels good. The combat is like, for a first person combat engine for this thing, it actually does a lot of neat shit. Like, you have a lot of different sword swipes or like melee swipes, and you can dismember enemies according to those. Like, it's really cool.
Yeah.
A lot of cool shit in here. So, worth your time, I think. Right after that, we're going to start getting right into Dark Souls 3 with 1 episode about our first impressions, and then we're going to jump right into it. And that extra time is going to give us time to beat it and also to start lining up guests.
Yeah.
So, I've said this before, and a lot of people have already come out with this stuff. If you have guest suggestions, send them my way. If those people don't show up on the show, it might not be because I don't want them there. They might just be too busy. So I've heard there's a short list of people that get suggested over and over that I would like to try to get on the show. That may not happen, but I'm also interested in people I don't know.
Right.
And real quick, like guiding principle there, like people would be good fits too. Like people who like Dark Souls is good, but also people you think would get along with me and Kole is a good. When we're having fun, I think it makes a better episode.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. If you like the show, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. That's one thing.
Yeah. If you want to find out about stuff that's going on the network, you can go to Duckfeed.tv/news. I put out a weekly update every Friday where you can check out either new releases or kind of new, just kind of, I don't know, opportunities is a real douchey word to say it. But it's kind of like the things that are happening, right? Yeah.
And ratings, reviews on iTunes are always appreciated.
Yeah. If you are going to be buying, if you have not pre-ordered your copy of Dark Souls 3 or the various strategy guides yet, please use our link at amazon.com at duckfeed.tv/tipjar. And we will go ahead and get a small little portion of that. It goes a long way towards helping us kind of fund things over here.
Yeah. And that goes for any major release you're looking to buy.
Yeah.
So thank you guys very much. And we know this is kind of a weird episode, but we'll be back next week with another weird episode and then back with something more traditional. Thanks for listening. And until next time, what should they watch out for, Cole?
They should watch out for like anything brushing up against you whatsoever.
Yeah. Don't touch anything that's cold.
Yeah. Umbasa.
Because you'll die.
Umbersa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
All right.
Man. I can make sure you give me those receipts for reimbursement.
Yeah.